Hello and welcome to day 15 of the 20-day Building Your Brand Challenge. And today we're going to talk about differentiation or differentiators for your brand. And it's a word that's kind of bandied around a little bit, but I will get into depth within that in today's episode as well as tomorrow's installment too. But let's just backtrack a little bit. So some of you have got some logo briefs still in play that you're getting towards the back end of. Some of you have already got some logos ready to go and other visual assets in terms of your visual identity. Some of you are also getting some content put together and you're finding an absolute goldmine, which is great to create your branded content. And others have moved ahead and have now started to put together some video content and get some photography put together for your brand. So we've talked about what your brand wears in terms of its marketing, how your brand walks and how it talks. And now that you've got a thorough understanding of that, what we're going to talk about is differentiation. Now, most people think that differentiation is simply about what you would wear or the color of your hair or something that you would differentiate yourself in terms of a visual identity. And that's actually not correct, because differentiation can come into many different forms. In fact, there's actually 13 different methodologies that we use to differentiate the brands that we work with. But because there's so many, I'm going to give you the top 6. So my 6 that are tried and true and tested and work for any business or any brand, irrespective of the business life cycle and where you're at. So it doesn't really matter if you're in startup mode, it doesn't matter if you're a small business that's fast growing and scaling up, and it really doesn't matter if you're an established family business that's been around for some time and you're looking to leave a legacy behind. So we're going to start with 3 today, and then in tomorrow's episode we're going to carry on with the other 3. And what I'm going to describe to you is personalities or celebrities or entrepreneurs in terms of how they have differentiated their brand, whether it's their personal brand or the brand that sits within their business, so that you've got some kind of education in terms of going back now and thinking about what can you do to differentiate your brand. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is authenticity. In fact, authenticity all the way. And the best example that I like to use is Freddie Mercury. Now, most people would know Freddie Mercury as the frontman of Queen, and you've probably had a little bit more of an in-depth insight into his life through the movie Bohemian Rhapsody. But what most people don't realize is that Freddie was an Indian immigrant. He was ridiculed and teased, he was sent off to boarding school, but he had a vocal style unmatched by many. And what most people don't realize is that he actually experimented quite a lot with his musical genre. He sung everything from rock to heavy metal to disco. And there's a lot of famous songs that we would know, such as We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions. And not only has he, inspired a generation that is older, but he's also inspiring the younger generations that are sort of coming through, particularly in musicals and kids' movies such as Happy Feet and Sing. Both of them actually have songs sung by Queen. But the reason that I like to use Freddie Mercury as authenticity all the way is he really didn't care about what people thought of him. He didn't care about the opinions of others. In fact, he didn't care so much that he actually stopped giving interviews to media. So he was somewhat of an enigma. And even 20-something years after his death, his authenticity is replicated through Wrangler jeans and through the studded arm bracelet that he actually wore at a Live Aid concert back in the 80s. And in fact, what most people don't realize is the fact that he's differentiated himself through his authenticity, through being real, through his experimentation, and through not caring about what other people thought of him, is after his death, he's still worth $60 million. And in fact, he still has over 2 million followers on Instagram. And what some people don't know is that he actually inspired Lady Gaga's name from the song Radio Gaga. So when it comes to being authentic for you and for your brand, authenticity doesn't just have to be your personal brand in terms of who or what you wear. Authenticity can mean that you actually are real in your marketing. You talk about real problems and real epidemics or real situations that your clients face with your branded product. It might be a swimwear label that actually shows different size women with lumps and bumps from the skinny to the voluptuous. So authenticity literally is, how can you be real and use that as a differentiator? A second example of a differentiator is to tell your story. Now, everyone has a backstory. Everyone has a story of how they started. We all know too well of the famous global brands such as Apple and Google and Amazon that all started in garages. But what most people don't know is the story of Walt Disney. Walt Disney wanted to build the happiest place on earth. And that's what we know Disneyland as today. But what most people don't realize is that he almost went bankrupt several times just trying to get Disneyland built. In fact, he was rejected dozens and dozens and dozens of times before he actually found the money through investors to build Disneyland. And all he wanted to do was to build the happiest place on earth. And he continued to tell his story. He continued to tell the story of Walt Disney. He continued to tell the story of how he created Mickey Mouse, his first original cartoon or animated cartoon. And what was interesting was that Walt Disney actually didn't survive. He died before Disneyland was ever built. And some people say, well, he never got to see it. But you're mistaken, because he did. He had the vision. He told his story. He had already seen it. And the reason I use Walt Disney is, how can you tell your story to differentiate your brand? How did you start up? How did you create something? Did you invent something? Is there a lucky story where you bumped into somebody else and something came to fruition? How can you tell your story through your marketing efforts to differentiate your brand? And one of the third ways that I like to differentiate brands is to make the products real. Now, this is an oversimplified statement and one that many people really get wrong. But if you get it right, wow, you can sell a lot of product. And the best example I like to use is when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson became Under Armour's brand ambassador back in 2012. When he became the brand ambassador, he got so involved with the brand that he didn't want makeup artists, he didn't want lighting, he choreographed all the workouts himself. He wanted a crew following him around, seeing him working his guts out in the gym, doing the work, paying the rent, as he used to say all the time, wearing all of the Under Armour products. And all the footage, all the photography and all the footage that they took of The Rock wearing Under Armour in the gym, in these what would have been considered relatively low budget productions, was raw, it was gritty, it had a bit of style to it, but it was all about The Rock. And do you know what happened when they made those products real? When Under Armour was there to support The Rock in his training efforts, within 24 hours they sold out all of their product on back order. So there are 3 ways that you can differentiate your brand, and tomorrow we're going to go through in another 3. So you don't have any exercises to do for today, but what I do want you to do is, in the next 24 hours, do a little bit of searching online, look up Freddie Mercury, look up Walt Disney, look up Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, read a little bit about their stories and their collaborations, and learn more about how they've managed to differentiate either themselves as their personal brand or the business behind the brand that supports them, whether it's a collaboration or one that they own as well too. So tomorrow we will go through 3 more brand differentiators. Of course, if you've got any comments or want some feedback, please PM me. Please mark up the comments below, and do share the love if you know someone that will benefit from the 20-day challenge. You know what to do. Stay tuned for tomorrow.